Good evening. My name is Councillor Khalik Malik, and I'm the chair of Overview Scrutiny Committee. It is now 6 p.m., and so I would like to welcome you all to the special meeting of the Overview Scrutiny Committee to address call in of decision on CEX 496 Street Space Program. I would like to welcome the members of the committee who are sitting this evening, as well as the council officer who will be assisting member throughout this meeting. In addition, I would like to welcome members of the public who are watching at home. As chair, I will be running this meeting and inviting people to speak. As it is very easy for people to speak over each other, I will ask each member or officer to speak in turn at the appropriate stage, and everyone will have a chance. This will mean that there should normally be no need for people to interrupt or to ask to speak. However, if a member does have any urgent reason to interject, for example, to raise a point with the chair, please do so by turning on your microphone and telling me that you wish to interject. The exception to this will be the committee or scrutiny officer who may turn on their microphone to alert me to any procedural or scrutiny issue that need address, although I would expect this to be a rare occurrence. In addition, we have a producer of the meeting from our IC department who may also contact me if necessary. The etiquette for members of the committee and for officers who are expecting to speak will be to mute your microphone until you are asked to speak. This means that only one person will be speaking at a time and there will be no background noise, making it easier for us all to allow the meeting and also for those watching at home. I will also ask members always to say who they are when they make a contribution and to speak slowly and clearly for the same reason. I would like to introduce each of the members here tonight one by one. I will start. My name is Councillor Khalik Malik, and I am the chair of this committee. I am also a ward councillor for Cranford Ward. Can I invite members briefly to speak to this order, which is alphabetical? The member to make sure their camera is on and unmute their microphone for a brief introduction. So alphabetically, first of all, can I ask Councillor Joanna Biddulph to introduce herself, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Joanna Biddulph and I represent Turnham Green Ward in Chiswick, as well as, of course, I'm a member of this committee.
Thank you very much. Can I ask Councillor Kamal Chowdhury to introduce herself, please?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Kamal Chowdhury and I'm one of the councillors for Velford North Ward, and I also sit on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Banna Chopra, if she is here, come forward and introduce herself, please. Can I ask Councillor Adriana Georgie to introduce herself if she is here? Okay. Can I ask Councillor Vikram Grewal to introduce himself, please?
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, all. My name is Councillor Vikram Garwal. I'm the Councillor for Hounslow Heath Ward, and I'm a member of this committee.
Thank you, Councillor Grewal. Can I ask Councillor Afzal Kiani to introduce himself, please?
Thank you, Chair. My name is Afzal Kiani. I represent Hounslow Heath Ward and I'm a member of this committee as well.
Thank you, Councillor Kiani. Can I ask Councillor Ron Mashiso to introduce himself, please?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Ron Mashiso, representing Turnham Green in Chiswick, and I'm a member of the Overview and Scrutiny panel.
Thank you, Councillor Mishisa. Can I ask Councillor Kuldeep Thak to introduce himself, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is Councillor Kuldeep Thak, Councillor for Feltham North Ward, and I'm a member of Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Thank you all. Can I ask member to mute their microphone once you finish? I believe we do finish. Please, can I ask the lead call-in members and cabinet member to introduce themselves and each member briefly to speak in this order, which is alphabetical. And first of all, can I ask Councillor Catherine Dunn to introduce herself, please?
Good evening, Chair. I'm Councillor Catherine Dunn, Cabinet Member for Communities and the Climate Emergency.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dunn. Can I ask Councillor Richard Eason to introduce himself, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Richard Eason. I'm leading one of the two call-ins, and I'm a Labour and Cooperative Councillor for Osterley and Spring Grove Ward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eason. Can I ask Councillor Hanif Khan to come forward and introduce himself?
Thank you very much, Chair. My name is Councillor Hanif Khan, and I'm the Leeds Cabinet Member for Transport and the One Hounslow programme. And I'm also a elected ward member for Hanworth Park region. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Khan. Councillor Guy Lambert, please introduce himself.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Councillor Guy Lambert. I'm a councillor for Brentford and the lead member for Waste and Recycling, Highways and the council's trading companies. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Councillor John Todd, please introduce yourself.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Councillor John Todd from Chiswick Homefields Ward.
Thank you, Councillor John. I believe Councillor Banna Chopra is here. If you wish to introduce yourself, please.
Yes, of course I do. Thank you, Chair. Apologies for trouble trying to get into the meeting and join. Technology was giving a bit of a challenge, but I'm here now. It's Councillor Bandana Chopra. I'm councillor for Hounslow West Ward, and obviously I'm a member of this Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chopra. Can I ask all members to mute their microphone once you have finished? Thank you. We also have the officer who will be supporting the meeting present, including Victoria Lawson, Mandy Skinner, Stephen Doran, Paul Probert, Taro Jarzynski, and Teresa Campbell Carbon. We also have officer acting in a producing role for the technical side of the meeting, but as they are not expected to be involved in the discussions of the meeting, I will thank them for their help but not introduce them by name. Councillors and members of the public are reminded that agenda and all the reports related to call-in of decision CEX 496 Street Space Programme by Councillor Richard Eason and Councillor John Todd can be found on the council website under the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting page. The public submission have also been published and are available online. In an unusual case, two separate requests for call-in have been received by Cabinet on Cabinet decision CEX 496 Street Space Programme made on 20th October 2020. Both call-ins will be dealt with together in this meeting because a decision can only be called in once. The call-in pertain to the Cabinet decision. Approve the process for undertaking interim and final reviews on street space scheme and consider the approval in principle the proposed phase 3 street space scheme developed following further detailed analysis of the network. On 25th October, a call-in of CEX 496 was received from Councillor Richard Eason. On 27th October 2020, a separate call-in on CEX 496 was received from Councillor John Todd. Both were signed by the required 8 councillors. The reason cited for the call-in as per the procedure are as follows. Inadequate consultation with stakeholder prior to the decision. Inadequate evidence on which to base a decision. The action is not proportionate to the desired outcome. A potential human rights or equalities challenge. Insufficient consideration of legal and financial advice. There have been discussion between the members leading the call-in and the relevant cabinet members, but there was no resolution. The running order for the meeting is declaration. OSC member will declare if they are signatories or leading a call-in. The Councillor Eason, as the member leading the first call-in, will be asked to set out the reason for call-in, including, if known, the outcome he is seeking. Councillor Todd, as the member leading the first call-in, will be asked to set out the reason for call-in, including, if known, the outcome he is seeking. Councillor Khan, Dunn and Lambert, as the cabinet members with portfolio relating to this decision, will be then have the opportunity to respond, which may include any suggested solutions for the committee to consider. Then it will be a chair's discretion, allow limited to Councillor Eason, Councillor Todd to ask supplementary question if of the response given. These questions will be addressed to the committee as it will be for the committee to ask them. These were for supplementary I'm referring to. Members of OSC will then have an opportunity to ask their question, which may or may not include those raised by Councillor Eason or Councillor Todd. The committee will then have an opportunity to retire to consider what they have heard and to reach a decision about how they want to proceed in terms of decision, and committee can choose to A, confirm the decision of SMD of 5th June 2018 with immediate effect, or B, refer the decision back to the cabinet for reconsideration within 5 working days. The committee will return to the meeting and set out their decision. Members are reminded not to refer to or discuss the C9 scheme, as this is under judicial review. Public submissions. As we were aware that there is significant interest in this issue, resident local groups were advised to submit statements or questions. OSC members have been asked to consider these as they ask questions. We received many responses from the public. These were categorized as we could not include those not relevant to the decision, related directly to C9, or that use defamatory languages as set out in the guidance note to the public. Those submission meeting the criteria were published for members on Friday for members to consider in their question and discussion. Before proceeding, I would like to advise that if you should find you are having a technical problem and need to log out of the meeting and come back in again, please let me know immediately, ideally beforehand or via the chat function, but if not afterwards, by turning on your microphone. This would be a permitted interruption. We can then decide how far we need to recap if that is necessary. Now we are proceeding with agenda item 1, which is apology for absence and declaration of interest. Please, can I invite an OSC member to declare their any interest? Do note that Councillor Eason, who is an OSC member, has, in order to lead the call-in, excused himself from OSC tonight. Can I invite Councillor Eason to confirm he has excused himself to lead the call-in?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I am the Vice Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I have excused myself from the committee to be leading this one of these call-ins this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eason. The following councillors are signatory to the call-ins and must now declare that they are signatory and will retain an open mind as discussion are being held. I'm calling now in turn, please, these are signatory to declare that they will be retaining an open mind. Number 1, Councillor Afzal Kiani, please.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to say that I was one of the signatory on this call-in, but I will say that I will have an open mind in this discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Kiani. Can I invite Councillor Joanna Bidoff to declare, please?
Yes, indeed, Chair. So the same for me. I'm a signatory to the call-in that Councillor Todd has brought in, but I will retain an open mind and listen to all participants first.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Joanna. Councillor Ron Mashiso, please. Can you come up and declare?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I'd like to say that I am one of the signatories on one of the call-ins by Councillor John Todd.
Thank you, Councillor Mashiso. Can I confirm that if there is any apology, is all members OSC present, or Councillor George, I believe, is she there?
Chair, Councillor George has sent me her apologies moments ago, so please do note that. And this is Councillor Vikram Gurwal of Hounslow Heath Ward.
Thank you, Councillor Gurwal.
Chair, I just wanted to confirm in my statement, just to say obviously I will have an open mind and hear both the evidence. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mashiso, for your contribution. So now we are on agenda item 2, which is a call-in decision on CEX 496 Street Space Program. Request for call-in, Councillor Richard Eason. Can I ask the members leading the call-ins to set out the reason for the call-in and state the outcome they are seeking if this is known? Councillor Richard Eason, would you please set out the reason for the call-in you are leading and the outcome you are seeking? Councillor Richard Eason, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I'd like to thank the committee for this opportunity to speak on this very important topic. I would also like to thank the very many residents, I think over 100 different residents who've written to me about this issue over the past week or two. I think this is highlighted just how important the issue of our streets are for the residents of the borough. It gives me no pleasure to be here highlighting failings of fellow Labour councillors. However, it is an indication of our healthy democracy that we can speak openly and frankly without fear of recrimination. I have led this call-in due to flawed decisions in the Cabinet paper of the 20th of October. We are challenging the way that the street space programme is being delivered, not the objectives of it. I'll members of the committee have received the papers and have seen the reasons I've stated to the call-in, so I won't repeat what's already written. But what I'd like to do is first of all speak to the second of the decisions that was made by Cabinet on the 20th of October, and that is the decision to proceed with phase 3 street space, approving the schemes which were listed in Appendix 3 of the Cabinet paper. That was a total, or that is a total of 33 projects that have been approved, and they won't be coming back for any further approval. This Cabinet decision on the 20th of October is the approval for those schemes. However, we find that those schemes have not actually been designed, or that most of them have not actually been designed, and they haven't been discussed with ward councillors, and they haven't been discussed with residents, they haven't been discussed with other stakeholders. So if we take, for example, LTN 22B, which is included on page 46 of the reports pack, this is described as a low traffic neighbourhood for the Osterley area. On the map that's in the pack, we can identify that LTN 22B will cover the area between the Great West Road northwards to Osterley Park, and Jersey Road that runs along the south of Osterley Park. So at the time of this Cabinet paper that was published about a week before the 20th of October, and right up to and after the Cabinet meeting, there had been no discussion whatsoever with me, or as far as I know, my other two ward councillors, about the scheme for the Osterley area. Furthermore, when I look back at the commonplace ideas gathering exercise that was done in the spring, there are absolutely no submissions on that covering the streets in this area. When we subsequently met with officers, they confirmed that this scheme had not been designed, and that they hadn't decided whether or not Jersey Road would be designated as a through route onto which traffic would be directed, or would be restricted in some way. Now that is the most fundamental part of such a scheme. So that's just one example, one that I'm familiar with because it's in my ward. There are 32 other schemes on Appendix 3 and I believe that they're all in a similar state of uncertainty. So if this Cabinet decision is allowed to stand, it is actually giving officers a blank check to implement whatever they see fit without reference to elected councillors, residents or other stakeholders. I hope you'll agree with me that this schedule of phase 3 projects fails in the test of adequate consultation with stakeholders prior to the decision. Now, moving on to one of my other reasons for call-in, and that is the potential human rights or equalities challenge. The Cabinet report from the 20th of October refers to a equality impact assessment, and after some delay I managed to get sight of that within the last week or so. Unfortunately, it is wholly inadequate. It is a high-level analysis of the street space program, and does not cover any, it does not consider any individual scheme in any detail. It certainly does not contain or give any consideration to the individual phase 3 schemes, which that cabinet decision has approved. Even as a high-level analysis, that equality assessment is flawed. Question 4 of the template. Question 4 of the template is a screening question to identify are there any areas of concern that could be affected by the decision. It lists the 9 protected characteristics and also the duty for fostering good relations and community cohesion. The only 2 areas which have been marked at that initial scoping are age and disability. All the other characteristics were marked as not in scope for further review. That includes pregnancy and maternity, and it includes the duty about fostering good relations and community cohesion. So by excluding pregnancy and maternity, it is sidestepping any consideration of an impact on parents of young children who may be reliant on motor vehicles for travel. And in terms of fostering good relations and community cohesion, we've actually seen how toxic the debates about street space have become. The way that this program has been implemented has pitted neighbour against neighbour in an extremely divisive way. And so by scoping that duty out, this qualities assessment is flawed. Then even in terms of the 2 characteristics that it did take into scope, the further dialogue or discussion in the document only talks about disability. It does not talk about age at all. And even within disability, it only talks about mobility, physical disabilities. It does not make any reference to sensory impairments, to learning disabilities, or to mental health. And as we should all be aware, the pandemic has had a terrible toll on residents' mental health. So there should be thorough discussion about the impact of changes to our streets on the mental health of residents, who are likely to a large number of whom are being affected by exceptional stress through the pandemic itself, or the economic consequences. People not knowing whether they've still got a job, and people who are concerned about the health of themselves and their loved ones. In the equality assessment, it gets to something called question 6, which says that you must consult or involve those affected by the decision, and asks for a list of relevant groups and how the views of these groups were obtained. The answer to that lists no groups. It has a fairly inappropriate sort of response saying, well, if we find any problems, we'll talk to some people then. That's not how quality assessments are supposed to work. So I won't labour that one any further, except to say that that assessment is very poorly completed and is insufficient for a programme of schemes of this nature. So yeah, just to a conclusion on the phase 3 point, what I would like to see as an outcome from this meeting on phase 3, on the phase 3 decision, is that decision be referred back to Cabinet with a recommendation that it be rewritten, that Cabinet approves the development of a phase 3 street space programme, considering the opportunities set out in section 3.5 and Appendix C of this report. The programme and each project within it will be developed with full, effective and inclusive consultation with ward councillors, residents and other stakeholders to maximise understanding and support and minimise unintended or unforeseen consequences prior to implementation. So that's what I would like to see in terms of phase 3. Now, if we go back to the first of the two decisions by Cabinet, and that is the setting out the process for
Councillor Eason, you're muted, I believe. Councillor Eason, you're muted.
Yeah. Yeah, I think. Sorry, I bumped something inadvertently. So now moving to the other decision, which was about the process for interim and final reviews of the schemes, which is covered in section 3.4 of the Cabinet report. Once again, I find that this process is insufficient. The process calls for the use of an independent consultant, and then lists a number of pieces of evidence for that process. And I believe that list is insufficient. I think it needs to also take account of the representations of ward councillors, and it needs to have a rigorous and representative survey of residents in the area affected. Now, and this request is actually borne out by some of the representations that are included in the pack. In particular, on page 67 of the pack, there is a representation from Hounslow Cycling. And Hounslow Cycling are supportive of the overall street space programme, but they are saying that they would like to see the review process strengthened. They are saying that we would like to suggest that as part of this process, as well as considering the results of the consultation process, policy and data, the council should also survey residents. They should seek to ensure all voices are heard, particularly from groups like the young who may not normally engage with the council. If not, there is a risk the council will only be listening to those who shout loudest. So they are saying that the existing consultation using the council's Have Your Say website is insufficient, and I agree with that. So I would be asking that the process, that additional activities are added to that process. The other key flaw in the process is that there is no mechanism for an emergency review. If there is a scheme which does not work, it should be within the power of the ward councillors representing a particular location to call for an emergency review within the first 1 to 2 months of the scheme being implemented, not having to wait 3 to 4 months for the independent review, or 6 or more months for the final independent review. So once again, I see that that process as being inadequate and not fit for the purpose that was intended. Now, so I would like to see the decision or the detail in section 3.4, and therefore the decision strengthened by adding specific requirement for representations from ward councillors, community groups and other stakeholders, adding a survey of residents to ensure that all voices are heard, and adding another process for ward councillors to trigger an emergency review of a scheme within the first 2 months of operation. So that is the outcome I'd like to see on that point. And finally, I think we need to reflect on the overall change process of the Street Space program. One of my earlier careers was working for a large multinational where we were implementing business transformation across Europe. And from that, I learnt quite a lot about change management. It's about the importance of winning hearts and minds, about engaging people who will be affected by change, and carrying them with you, making sure that they understand what the change is and why it is being done, even if they don't agree. The fact that they have been engaged and carried forward as part of the process, that makes change much more much more likely to be successful. Unfortunately, reflecting on this program, this has not happened. It has been change has been imposed on people, and this is and the 2 of the lead members involved, I believe, should have known better than this, and I believe the result of this is that they have lost the confidence of members and residents, and in my view, they should resign. That their positions are untenable. So I believe the lead member for transport and the lead member for communities, in each case, they have lost the confidence of members and residents, and I feel that they should be resigning from Cabinet to create space for this program to be reshaped and delivered with the support of residents. That's the end of my representation. Happy to take questions at the appropriate time in the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Eason. Can I? This is the time for Councillor John Todd. Could you please, John, set out the reason for the call in your leading, you are leading, and the outcome you are seeking? Councillor John Todd, please.
Chair, thank you for that kind invitation. Can I clarify, this is just a sort of opening speech and you'll come back to us for more details, is that correct?
This is your opportunity to lay out what you, your opportunity to lay out what you are calling for, and we will, if it's appropriate, we will give you opportunity again through the chair.
Okay, I'm confused.
You're confused.
I'm very happy to do what you're saying, but I have a fairly substantial presentation. What I thought Richard was doing was setting out a summation of what his grounds were and his recommendations. So, are you saying we don't expect to hear from Mr. Eason again?
Possibly, if we need to, if I see that there is any relevance, and we will invite him again. But this is your opportunity, exactly what Councillor Eason has come up with.
Chair, that's very clear, and I apologise for it's a challenge, not a question, not a criticism. You see my report. I'll give you my 5 reasons, and then Number 1, inadequate consultation with stakeholders prior to decision. Number 2, inadequate evidence on which to base a decision. Number 3, the action is not proportionate to the desired income. Number 4, human rights equalities. And number 5 is insufficient consideration of legal and financial advice. Now, I want to withdraw that one. I'm withdrawing my 5th reason. I can explain if you want. And I also want to withdraw a letter that's in the final paragraph of my earlier submission to you of showing my grounds. It's a letter that someone's disputed the use of, so I should want to withdraw it without making further reference to it. So coming on to my case and the reasons, what's so significant is the huge public interest in this and the huge anger and challenge within Chiswick. I can only speak for Chiswick. The town hall's closed. I think lots of cabinet members' eyes and ears are closed too. So we had this huge, and I mean huge, people are incandescent about what's going on. What we've seen so far is how the cabinet and the lead members have dealt with phase 1 and phase 2 of the scheme, and in my view that's clearly identifiable as an abysmal failure. I don't enjoy being harsh on the council, but I need to remind colleagues and other people a recent report done by a consultant made the following comments. Hounslow Council, its capacity for understanding how we perform and what residents think of us is underdeveloped, and in some instances opinion is more than evidence in assessing performance of services. Our approach to community engagement is poor. We are stuck in a neighbourhood renewal paradigm that predates austerity. Now that's very strong statement, and to me that encapsulates the issue within the council and this paper. What's so significant is we don't object to the concept of the street space scheme, providing it's effective. But Chair, it's not effective. Can I just touch briefly with some local data, then I can move on? Yeah, we've had petitions regarding the closure of Turner Green and others. A total number of votes cast is 15,765. An important aspect of Chiswick, and I have to be parochial in this, but I am conscious, of course, it covers the whole borough. The average age, number of people over 60 in Chiswick is approximately 20%, and of those, 14% are described as being disabled in any form. What's interesting, when just touching on air pollution and related matters, Ealing Council did a survey, a mileage and fuel cost analysis dealing with LTNs. And they identified that the effects of closure as reducing resident-driven mileage inside the LTN was 59% reduction in mileage, but up the mileage on boundary roads by 187%, with an overall increase by 52%. On the boundary road, the emissions went up by, CO2 emissions went up by 730 tonnes, and the internal road down by 280. And so what we have, Chairman, is cause and effect. So whilst we close one road, the pollution doesn't evaporate, the traffic doesn't evaporate, it goes elsewhere. Two very simple examples. Most cabinet members know Devonshire Road. We now have roads either side of it, Brackley and Bourne Terrace, is now another rat run. So it highlights two things. They want further review, and secondly, the inaction of those responsible to move toward dealing with that promptly. Before I move on, I'll just say that I'm very happy with what Councillor Eason said, so I don't want to repeat what he said. I just want to finally quote Grant Shapps. He says, "I'm absolutely clear that we're not prepared to tolerate hastily introduced schemes which will create sweeping changes to communities without consultation, and ones where the benefits to cycling and walking do not outweigh the disbenefits for other road users." Now, moving on to my comments about consultation. The consultation process was done in two phases, one in April, May, June, and one in November. What a resident has found in respect of Devonshire Road, that despite the votes on common space showing 169 people were against any scheme, only 54 were for it. And one of the reasons that this didn't come to the surface, if that's the right expression, is that officers, in assessing the results, took certain marks but not the free text. So what happened there was that the against was neutered in effect. Common space, as I said, is the vehicle used. It's open to interpretation, but I will accept the figures for the sake of our discussion. But I just want a local resident has gone through nearly 1,000 entries in common space to do a survey. He is very happy to share his working papers, but I'm just going to highlight some figures that he comes up with. I mentioned Devonshire Road. The common space one was 421 against, 91 for. Turnham Green Terrace, 58 for, 1851 against. So 97% of the people who voted against failed to have any impact and watched as Turnham Green Terrace, its business and attributes were decimated, remain decimated. Business owners remain in a traumatic state. There's allegedly some sort of review going on, but we have no evidence of review, and I can find no one, nor can some of my colleagues, find anyone who has been interviewed. I'll just give you one brief impact of what's happened in Devonshire Road. A man running a very successful business has seen a 40% drop in business, and we've let 5 staff go, made redundant, and 2 are still furloughed, with little possibility of returning. All their colleagues in other parts of London have recovered 100% after the lockdown, most of them actually doing better than before. We are not recovering. We're 40% below. The council's policies made it impossible for patients in pain and patients with a disability to attend our clinic. No parking within my building, and so my business is materially affected. If I carry on, Chair, can I come to the analysis, equalities analysis form? My colleague Councillor Easton's raised it. We only received this last Thursday. Instantly, that being the date that members of the public were barred from doing any further submissions. And I just highlight, working on your own against a council with QCs in their back pocket and loads of staff is very difficult. So I want you to put that in context. But I'm going to make some damning statements here. This is an equalities analysis form. It's dated circa 6th of October. It requests information. Please list the groups you've spoken to. Not one word. Explain the details of the relevant, just 3 words. At the back it says action plan should be developed. There's no action plan. So I'm going on facts, not speculation. This document to me is utterly worthwhile, and in my view fails both the requirements of the legislation, where Grant Shapps said you must consult with disability groups, with ambulance drivers, other people, hundreds of other groups, not hundreds, a significant number, and there is no evidence of not one entry in this document. So as far as I'm reading, it's a stale, dead document, and it easily fails the acid test of challenge and scrutiny. There's no doubt about it. In the Secretary of State issued clear guidance in the Traffic Management Act. He says, by way of example, just to get confirmation, although the initial implementation period can be quick, local residents and businesses should still be given the opportunity to comment on proposed changes and the need for extra monitoring and consultation. He says how important it is that consider people with blue badges and deal with local groups representing disabled people should be consulted. No ifs, no buts. They should be consulted. My final armchair, I'm getting to the end, so bear with me, is the impact on a specialised group. And we have in Chiswick a wonderful health centre, and we have another West GP doctor's practice. And I want to bear with me and listen to this heartfelt plea. It's from the district nurse team manager for Chiswick Community Nursing. She has 200 patients, including those who need daily visits for insulin, medication, palliative and end of care life, chemotherapy, pleural and abdominal drainage. All our patients cannot attend GP practices as they require an ambulance to transport them. The role we carry is stressful and hard, and they determined to have the highest standard possibly. However, our role is made difficult, almost impossible and stressful due to measures which Hounslow Council have installed in Chiswick. The result is that it's been far more time consuming and difficult to get patient to patient due to time spent in traffic. It can now take, I'm not going to mention the street, and also 45 minutes to see people in off of Turner Green and Fisher's Lane. The result of this, patients may not get their medication at the correct time, and there are delays in responding to emergency calls, such as blocked catheters or administration of pain relief or end of care patient. They say they've written to the council and their request was negative, which will impact on the service. We cannot walk or cycle. We have written to the council and our chief executive has written with no successful response. We do not feel that our concerns are being listened to or heard despite a trial period. We don't know how long this is going to go on for. The other doctor's surgery says the same. One doctor spent over an hour and a half trying to get to Bedford Park and left at 8:20 in the evening. GPs often have them cross borders to provide vital services to house-based patients. In this case, it involves patients outside the borough. In recent years, GPs have been aware of the borough being unsupportive of the community-based health services by, for example, charging £300 per permit to allow for the GP to carry out their health. I feel that changes that have been in place and those planned will materially put lives at risk. Chair, I think I've made my point under my heading of equalities, the clear breach, the clear failure to follow. And I'll come on to one more item which encapsulates lots of things. There's a barrier that had needed police enforcement and a set of traffic lights post over Staveley Road, Park Road, Staveley. Subject of a chief officer decision in September, the council wrote to the ambulance service to inform them or consult. My understanding is they need to be consulted. The ambulance service came back and said they're against these schemes. I've seen the correspondence. They're against it for a number of reasons, that their fleet goes all over London, so they don't know the area. What's significant is here's a resident in Park Road said her husband's recovering from lung cancer and his medical problems increased considerably. 3 weeks ago, we had to call out an ambulance to take him to hospital with sepsis to the chest. The emergency services were not aware of the traffic restriction in the area, and as a result, took longer to reach us. And we had to take the long way round to the journey to Charing Cross. The hospital were very worried about the inordinate delay of an emergency vehicle. Chair, I rest my case. You asked a very fair question. What do I seek? What the evidence I've shown outside the recommendation shows that the council need to revisit the whole scheme again. They cannot proceed with Appendix 3 or any of those schemes without detail, credibility and trust. But I'll make some specific recommendations. Councils must publish plans to show how they will consult their communities, including residents, businesses and emergency services, amongst others. Show evidence of appropriate consultation prior to the schemes being implemented. Submit monitoring reports on the implementation of schemes after their opening and highlight how schemes have been modified based on local feedback to ensure they work for communities. Our community engagement project, which I support, I've read every bit of paper, is a very powerful document. And the most powerful thing that comes out to me is passing power to residents. Power. You need trust for that and you need credibility. And I'm afraid that regrettably, the council have neither. I rest my case if that's the right expression. Thank you for listening and thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Now this is opportunity for Councillor Khan, Dunn and Lambert. Please, would you respond to the issue raised by Councillor Eason and Todd, which may include any suggested resolution for the committee to consider?
Chair, thank you very much for the opportunity to respond to both Councillor Eason and Councillor Todd for their opening statements, which are good, and we appreciate them. But there's initial response that I like to give to what has been said, and then once I've given that initial response, I'm happy to take kind of further questions as well, because a lot of what I want to say in my initial response kind of negates a lot of what has been said in both those opening statements, and it's clear for people listening into this need to recognise that as well, because when the paper came in October, there were two key recommendations, and one was to approve the process for undertaking interim and final reviews on the street space scheme. Okay, so that was the first one. And then the second one was to consider and approve in principle the proposed phase 3 street space schemes. Okay, so what I want to just firstly say is that phase 3 program has not started yet, and the report sought in principle for the agreement so that our officers could take the necessary data collection that has already started but needed to carry out more data collection for us to start with phase 3. And much of what both the opening statements have referred to that which hasn't started. But any suggestions that's being taken forward without any adequate consultation, I would refute that. And also the consultation and the engagement process in phase 3. And at this point, not only that it hasn't started, Chair, it hasn't been designed yet in its full capacity at all. And that the report that was submitted said that it would include a full consultation and that any decisions that we would make would come back to Cabinet for future transport delivery plan. So I just want our colleagues to understand that as an opening kind of response. And then in relation to the process of the interim and final reviews, we understand the strength of the opinion. I definitely do. Both my colleagues who have been supporting me know that. We have received emails from both spectrums, both in favour and both in not in favour as well. And this is a divided opinion on this debate on the street space programme. Hence why I welcome today for us to lay that out as well. And the council has made changes to some of the schemes during the opening kind of the process of when it was going to start as well. And look, let's go back in May in 2020 when, if you remember, in that moment in time, and how not only was London panicking, but the whole of the United Kingdom and the whole of the world was panicking. So there were instructions that were given, sent down from the government that's in power today and through the Secretary of State for us to implement and adopt our network, so the space for our network could enable social distancing and then reallocate more space to support walking and cycling and as the lockdown eased. So that was a moment in time. And I believe strongly that the London Borough of Hounslow responded very well to that. And we took that very serious at that time. And also, this is part of the council's own policy framework when it looks at the transport strategy that sets out the objectives of the livable neighbourhoods and that are there to improve the attractiveness, to increase in active travel, and also most recently, and we all did this, we all agreed in January of this year, and then again in July to approve the Climate Emergency Action Plan. And that was really important. So we haven't been ignoring this at all. So, but we have been very clear, and I'll say it again, that we're here to listen to the voices. And when I say we're here to listen to the voices, I'm not only listening, and we are not only listening to the loudest voices, we're listening to all the voices from all sides of the spectrum and every aspect of this as well. And the process approved a Cabinet makes our approach on the reviews transparent. It makes it clear to our residents as well, and also for our businesses and the interest of all of our stakeholders. These reviews would definitely determine whether, and I've said this not, and I'm going to say it again, I've repeated myself many times at many platforms, that we will modify or we will remove them altogether if the data and the evidence that we're collecting during this live environment of these experimental traffic orders suggest that to happen. And we are about to start our interim reviews, and we'll look at that evidence that's come through. And also, I would also like to say that we are engaging with ward councillors, and we have done so, and we do so all the time. And depending on which scheme or what stage they are, all councillors, ward councillors, will be spoken to, and views will be taken from them as well. So, Chair, through you, that is my initial response, and there are much more points that were raised before that I'm happy to discuss later through further questions as well, especially related to the equalities and impact side, because we know that it's in draft. We know that a lot of work has taken place in that as well, and it forms a lot of our opinions as well. And the point to note just here right now is that that's in a draft process at the moment, because the interim process hasn't actually finished as well. And it's key for us to note, who are here on this committee as well, that we will engage with ward councillors like we've done already. So, Chair, that is my kind of opening response, and I would be happy, along with my colleagues, to take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Is there anything Councillor Dunn or Councillor Lambert has to say at this point?
Yes, Chair. I'd be happy to add to that briefly. Councillor Khan has of course covered a lot of it, but I just want to add my support here and just pick on some specific things. So again, as has been made clear by everyone who's spoken so far, this call-in relates to two specific decisions which were part of the Cabinet report. And the first one being the review. I think everyone, I'm sure, wants this review to go ahead. We're in the middle of a trial, and I can't imagine that anyone wants that to carry on indefinitely without a review going ahead. And it is, the interim review can go ahead imminently if it's not subject to further delays. We do appreciate everyone who has written in so far to give us their views on all of the schemes that are in place, but that is only part of it. We have set out a process that we will follow, and it's very important for democracy's sake that we follow this process and are not swayed by loud or large groups of people saying do this now. We resisted that at the beginning when there was a lot of pressure to put in schemes immediately with no prior consultation, and we did go ahead with the street space consultation to understand from our residents where schemes were needed, what these might look like, and to give people a chance to comment on that. The reviews and the decisions and consultations around whether the schemes are to become permanent will of course be in much more depth, and we are, as I said, we're grateful to everyone who's written in so far, but we're also mindful of statutory government advice, not to only listen to the loudest voices or to be swayed by particular interest groups. We do need to hear from all who have been affected and for everyone who may have a view. And it's good to see that people have referenced that tonight. Whether you can carry out a representative survey for every individual scheme is a question that can be explored, but it seems unlikely given the numbers involved, but it is something we want to consider when it comes to the overall programme, and we can point to representative surveys that have been carried out nationally and at a London-wide level by respective polling companies, which do show that a majority of residents are in favour of measures to reduce traffic, reduce through traffic and create safer spaces for walking and cycling. The other thing to bear in mind is that change doesn't happen overnight. Changes to the physical infrastructure can take place quickly if necessary, but people's behaviours, people's understanding of how to respond to this can take longer to change, to get used to. And so it's not surprising that this has caused some disruption, some anger even in the communities where these changes have taken place. These are radical changes, and that is absolutely what it should be. We are taking, as described by the government, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to make these changes, to reallocate road space to other forms of transport, ones that don't cause air pollution or congestion or carbon emissions, and that are much healthier for people to take part in. And this takes time for people to adapt to. And so when you implement experimental traffic orders, as these have been done, there is a requirement to take people's views across throughout the whole length of the trial, and not simply to look at what people say straight away, because people do actually change their minds as they become accustomed to the measures that are in place, as other people's actions change in relation to what's taken place. And so I think Councillor Todd said traffic doesn't just evaporate. There is evidence that traffic does evaporate. Now, that obviously is a metaphor, but there is evidence from research that traffic levels do decrease in areas where this type of measure has taken place. And in fact, we've seen it in our very own borough following the closure to through traffic of Church Street in Isleworth, where you might expect to see all of that traffic displaced onto main roads in the vicinity. And whilst there was some displacement of traffic, it was not at all in the numbers you might have expected. And traffic did not increase to levels that people might have warned about on main roads like Twickenham Road. And the air pollution continues to decrease on Twickenham Road. So we need to listen to everyone. We need to give it time. We need to understand what people's fears are for these schemes. But we also need objective evidence to look at whether those fears have materialised or not. Whether it is actually doing what it's supposed to do, or whether on certain schemes that's not happening. So all these things need to be taken into account, which is why, whilst we need to get moving with these reviews and make sure we've got all the right things in place, we shouldn't be rushing them through. We shouldn't be making decisions to remove infrastructure that is barely in, as some other boroughs are doing. To move on to the other decision, which was the phase 3 in principle decision. As Councillor Khan has already said, these are proposals only. That is clearly set out in the Cabinet report. And Cabinet does approve these in principle because low traffic neighbourhoods, priority cycleways do support our corporate objectives to improve air quality, reduce carbon emissions and to promote active travel. So we agree with them in principle. But Councillor Easton is wrong to say that it won't be coming back to Cabinet. It is stated in section 3.5 of the report that these will come back to Cabinet as part of an updated delivery plan. And this will take into account updated guidance from government And it's worth pointing out that the guidance from government has changed. The first guidance that was issued did talk about bringing in schemes quickly within weeks. If you think about the amount of consultation you can do within weeks, when you're talking about whole borough schemes, it is limited. And that's to be acknowledged, and we were encouraged to bring them in as experimental traffic orders and do consultation after the schemes were in place. And whilst that can still go ahead in that way, that the latest guidance from the government that we will absolutely be taking on board and complying by is now calling for more consultation prior to those schemes going in. So there's no question that Scheme 3 would be implemented without consultation of residents and stakeholders. Ward councillors would continue to be involved as they have been throughout this, and it will be coming back to Cabinet. It's simply an in principle approval of the idea that we can implement these schemes, not that they all necessarily need to go ahead. And as has been pointed out several times, that detailed design work hasn't been done, and it will be done in consultation with residents, ward councillors and other stakeholders. And just finally, just to take issue with, I mean, I already covered about why it's important to take on to understand different people's views. I'm glad that there does seem to be some disagreement between the different councillors who've called this in. I mean, Councillor Todd, the commonplace consultation that took place via commonplace was not a vote. It's not a referendum. You cannot count up the number in favour versus the number of against. It's not representative, and you know it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. This is an opportunity for Councillor Lambert. In addition to what already been covered, please come up if you want to say so. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I won't detain you very long because Councillors Khan and Councillors Dunn have said most of the important things. I would merely point to a couple of things that haven't been pointed up specifically. The first is, if you look in the Cabinet report 3.3D, it does clearly state that the street space programme is a borough-wide initiative, and hence the purview for the progression of schemes falls to the lead member in Cabinet working with the relevant chief officer. However, feedback on proposals from ward councillors is being sought wherever practicable. Now, in the phase 1 and 2 of the scheme, the engagement with ward councillors was limited, and it was limited for the very reason that Catherine Dunn pointed out, that these things were schemes were to be put in as soon as possible and within weeks. It was not realistic to have extensive engagement with ward councillors before that happened, but the attempts were made to do that. For phase 3, again, as Catherine and Hanif have pointed out, this is merely all that was approved in that decision was for further investigations to be taken into specific schemes which support our overall transport policy of creating more low traffic neighbourhoods, cycle routes, etc. It's absolutely clear that those schemes have not been designed yet. So I'm not quite sure why people are complaining about them not having been designed yet. That they clearly haven't been designed yet. That they are a statement of ambition to support the transport strategy that has been approved and agreed. And without question, they will go through a design stage. They will go through extensive consultation, including with ward councillors, including with residents, including with businesses and anybody else affected, before we get anywhere near to implementing them. So I'm afraid that the concerns that have been expressed about phase 3 are invalid. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Now, this is an opportunity for the OSC member if they wish to ask any questions. So I will invite the committee to ask question in alphabetical order. As I mentioned their name, please ask the question if you wish to. So first of all, can I ask Councillor Joanna Biddulph to ask if you have any question? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I do. First of all, can I say thank you very much to the two people who've brought their views in call-ins, and I'm particularly pleased that in Richard Eason's presentation, he has picked up on the toxicity and the divisiveness that we've experienced in Chiswick, because it's not clear to me that people outside Chiswick are interested in what's happening here. This is a borough-wide initiative, I know, but practicing guinea pigging has been taking place in Chiswick. I'm also particularly pleased that he talked about this is about winning hearts and minds and taking people along with you, and this has not happened as far as I can tell from the presentations that have been made by the cabinet members afterwards. To lead to an outcome that you call for the resignation of two cabinet members is extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary, and I have to bear that in mind. And I'm particularly taken by his point about this new phase 3 being a request for a blank cheque to do as the cabinet wants. And I'm very concerned about that, particularly in the light of the answers that we've had from Councillors Khan, Dunn and Lambert, which it seems to me are the same answers as they were giving us back in May and June. And we're now a day off December.
Sorry, Chair, is there a question?
There is a question coming, yes, but I think I should pay tribute to the fact that two people have put an extraordinary amount of work into making a very helpful presentations to this committee so that we can make good decisions at the end of it. That's the point. So I feel I have to raise some important points before I get to the question. With John Todd, he raises important points about inaction and how slow movement has been to do anything about the disquiet and the toxicity that Richard Eason was talking about.
Sorry, we've heard the opening statements, Chair.
My apologies, sorry.
I'm just wondering if there's a question coming?
Yeah. Can I ask Councillor Biddulph, please, this is an opportunity for OSC member to ask question.
Indeed.
I'll be grateful.
And so questions have been raised about the particularly consultation. And I'd like to pick up on points then that Councillor Khan has made, but set against the background that we've had a summary from John Todd about how opinion doesn't matter. I would like to know, given that, I would like to know your view, Councillor Khan, on the validity in market research terms of common space, of Hounslow Have Your Say, and of other research, so-called research that has been taken, because as I understand it, they do not meet Market Research Society rules. And I would like also to have an answer to my question about, you say that you have consulted with councillors. I've not been consulted, or if I have, I'm not aware of that. What methods have you been using? You and Councillor Dunn have talked about not listening to the loudest. Councillor Dunn's also talked about not listening to the largest number of people. Who are you listening to? How do you grade their responses, the relevance of their responses, the importance of their responses, and how you
sorry, can I ask Councillor Dunn, let Councillor Biddulph, do you have anything further? Sorry.
Those were quite clear questions directed at Councillor Khan. If we're not going to be respected as members of this committee by those who are here to answer to the charges brought, then there is no point in carrying on meeting. We must have a chance to have our questions put and answered, and not interrupted by people.
I'm asking to make a point of order, Chair.
So, thank you. Councillor Biddulph, do you have you finished your question, please?
For the moment, I have, yes.
So can I ask OSC member to have a brief question, because then it will be opportunity for more question to be asked from OSC member. Councillor Dunn, do you have anything?
Point of order, Chair.
Yes. Sorry, can I ask Councillor Dunn if she has something point of order?
Yes, just to say that I didn't say we wouldn't listen to the biggest amount of people. I said we won't listen to. I said that just because a large number of people write to us doesn't mean that's representative. And so, of course, we are listening to everyone. I said we won't change what we do without going through a proper process.
Well, you didn't quite say that, Catherine. I noted it down. You might have meant to say that.
Thank you for clarity. Sorry, Councillor Biddulph. Thank you, Councillor Dunn, for clarity.
Point of order, sir. Chair.
Yes. Do you have anything to raise? Yes.
Yes. Point of order. Chair, you are the chairperson of this meeting, and so far we've allowed the people to speak, the officers, sorry, the cabinet members and the two councillors without interruption. Why is it that when Councillor Biddulph speaks, she's been interrupted twice already?
Thank you. Thank you. Can I ask everyone who is participating in the meeting, can you please let everyone calmly, clearly ask the question, wait for your turn, and then I will invite you to respond for the question. Thank you. Councillor Biddulph.
I have made my questions to Councillor Khan. They are about consultation. The points that were made about trust are very important. How are you going to persuade us that the means that you're going to use are going to be trustworthy and representative of the facts and not just representative of what you want to hear? Because so far, commonplace, Hounslow have your say, and other methods have not been systems that are recognised by the Market Research Society. I've got details here from, I've had them all analysed by the Market Research Society members about how effective they are and how representative they are, and they fail. All of them fail. So what are you going to do that's different to listen to views and to make a sensible judgment based on well-found information?
Thank you. Can I invite Councillor Khan to respond, please?
Sorry, I also have a question about what it was that we had been asked, because I haven't been asked by anybody what my views are. That's the other point.
Thank you.
So, Chair, thank you very much. I'm happy to answer the questions, but I just wanted to try and understand the questions. Which grounds are you referring to on the questions? Is it ground one? Just so I can just understand in terms of the call-in. Is it ground one that you're referring to?
I'm responding to the points that you made, Councillor Khan, about the fact that you have, in your opinion, asked councillors how, because I don't recall being asked, and how is that being measured, and that you have consulted others, but you've used consultation methods that are not recognised by the Market Research Society. And besides which, regardless of the outcomes, you do what you want to do anyway. John's given some answers, some statistics about the number of people who are against the closure of Turnham Green Terrace and against the closure of Devonshire Road. We've got other roads as well. 92% against closure, 8% in favour, and yet you still close the roads, keeping them closed. So if those consultation methods don't work, what do?
Thank you.
The grounds don't matter, Kenneth. I think you're trying to obfuscate. You're here to answer questions of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, which we've all spent an awful lot of time researching and putting effort into, and just to try to block it is inappropriate. You've been asked fair questions, and I believe I'm entitled to answers.
So,
thank you.
Chair, thank you very much. When I did request, I said I'm happy to answer the questions. I never said I was not going to answer the questions. And I think it's important, we're all here to have the questions being asked of us and for us to respond. I only asked if, because there are 5 grounds and Councillor Biddulph was referring to both the opening statements from both Councillor Todd and Councillor Eason that laid out the grounds as to why they were bringing in the call-in. So ground one was about the inadequate consultation, and there were others as well. So I just wanted to understand a little bit more. But if Councillor Biddulph feels that the grounds are not necessary, but I will give you an answer, Councillor.
Sorry, can I?
That's not
sorry,
accurate.
Councillor Biddulph. So in terms of the
Can
divided,
I ask Councillor Biddulph, you asked the question, can you let Councillor Khan to answer? And if there is anything supplementary you have, please put in your chat box as S, then I will invite you for a supplementary question. Councillor Khan, please.
This isn't, I'm afraid it isn't a supplementary. It's trying to get the question accurately put.
Correct.
And Councillor Khan is trying to make out that I am not asking them against one of the 5 terms, one of which has been withdrawn. So it's 4 terms now of the grounds for the call-in. So I will repeat it. It's inadequate consultation with stakeholders prior to the decision. We've had defence from Councillor Dunn in particular that it's going to happen, and from you that it's going to happen. This is consultation prior to the decision. That's one of the grounds. And part of that is inadequate evidence on which to base a decision, because evidence that we've had has been ignored. So those are the 2 grounds.
Thank you. Councillor Khan, please.
Thank you very much. So thank you there, Councillor Biddulph. So I understand in terms of the consultation prior to the implementation of phase 3. So we kind of already answered that in our opening statement.
Sorry, no, it's prior to the decision.
Sorry,
sure.
Can
so
I?
The decisions to implement the street space schemes, that's what you're asking for. So where we've implemented over 50 schemes across the borough, those that also include not only. So you're nodding your head, Councillor.
I'm not nodding. I'm not nodding. I am shaking.
Okay, so
There's a difference. I am not nodding.
Okay, so can I just through you, Chair, because I want to go through the Chair.
Sorry,
so
can
Chair,
I ask?
in terms
Sorry, Councillor Khan, Councillor Biddulph, if anything you want to raise or you want to say, please go through the Chair, and I will then invite you further what you want to say. So, Councillor Khan, is anything you want to clarify what Councillor Biddulph has questioned?
Yeah, I've already got the clarification, because it was as when the street space programs went in. I assume it's relating to phase 1.
No, no, Chair, it's not. It's the call-in. It's quite clear, Chair. The call-in is about CEX 496, and that is phase 3. That we have not had consultation prior to the decision.
Phase 3 hasn't.
Prior to the decision. The decision is what we're calling in. We have not had prior consultation with stakeholders. You can't rewrite the call-in, Chair. He cannot rewrite the call-in. The call-in is the call-in.
So, Chair, my initial response to phase 3 is that the programme has not started. Phase 3, it hasn't started yet. So this is why I wanted clarification. So the report asked for in principle agreement, so that officers could then undertake the data collection for the 3 key areas. So the 3 key areas was, 1, a review of all of the educational sites to assess the suitability, say, for example, school streets, the approach. Then it was also asking if the process defining all of our residential neighbourhoods with kind of like a unique identifier, so which we can look at each level through that kind of lens, and then look at a high level feasibility assessment into the opportunities for kind of like a rapid improvement, then to kind of how we're going to reprioritize our network. So that's what phase 3 is asking for. So that's what the report is in place for. And then through the kind of like the schemes, the work streams that then will come through from phase 3, they will then be incorporated into our longer term strategy of the transport strategy. So that's that side of things. So this is why I was clarifying at the beginning as to what Councillor Biddulph was requesting for. And then the Cabinet obviously makes clear that in phase 3, that these will be taken into our next 3-year transport strategy, our LIP, our delivery plan. So that's what we're asking in principle for us to develop it later in 2021. So hopefully that kind of understands it. But Councillor Biddulph asked if she had been consulted on the scheme. So I mean, I do not want to put my officers on the spot here, but from my information, during the processes, many of the Chiswick Ward councillors had many meetings with officers discussing every single aspect of the schemes, and they were continuous meetings, and this is what officers do, and they did that. And I can ask officers to recall the numerous meetings, and also Councillor Biddulph, along with other councillors, I had a meeting with yourselves to discuss all of the South Chiswick street space programme for you as well, where we had all, I think all of the Chiswick councillors were there as well. And then recently after that, we then had another meeting with officers that you were also attended as well, where we spoke to residents as well. So in terms of saying you don't know what's going on and you have not had the consultation, so look, I don't want to get into it. Look, I have an open mind. The consultation process, we're going to do our interim reviews. We want to listen, and this is exactly the point where, if we, based on the evidence that we have collected, I will look at the evidence with my officers, with the experts, the steer group that we've appointed to look at the analysis and help guide us into understanding what it is and how we want to move forward as well. And I haven't not answered that question, so you can come back to me on that if you don't know what's been going on. And in terms of where you mentioned about the opinion of our residents, the scheme is a scheme that goes across the whole borough. Okay, these schemes, all of them that took place, they are around when we started in June, when they started in September. We know simultaneously when the scheme in Devonshire Road was implemented, and Turnham Green Station, they were also implemented in Hounslow West Station as well. And Hounslow West Station is across the other end of the, in fact, it's quite on the west side of the borough. So there were lots of schemes that went in place. So many school streets have started, so many pop-up cycle lanes have been implemented across the borough. So when we look at what we did and understanding and collecting that data, the data that we will use will then be analysed, both financial data through the MasterCard applications, data through our engagement with our residents. And you mentioned about consultation. You know, and we all know that experimental traffic orders are implemented so that data can be collected in a live environment. And I did mention in my opening statement that when we looked at the time at that moment when our country and our was going through a pandemic, was very worried and very scared, we had to make decisions. And that's why Grant Shapps told us, local authority, to start with experimental traffic orders, and it's an opportunity for us to act swiftly. And then we sought further clarification. It was to be done in weeks, and then it was for a transformational, generational change, once in a lifetime opportunity. Now we know that's been updated because we're in a different moment in the pandemic. Life has changed, and we have also understood from, as Councillor Dunn said, that we need to also now understand what the new instructions are. And this is why we're looking at these interim reviews, which happen after 3 to 4 months. Once those interim reviews are done and carried out, if there is a requirement at that moment to make a change or an update, we will do it with the evidence. And the consultation has been going on, it's still going on. Like yourself and like many of your colleagues and my colleagues have received thousands of emails.
Sorry, Councillor Khan, can I intervene here, please?
Sorry, Chair, I can stop there. I'm happy to take a supplementary.
Thank you.
Councillor Dunn want to come back.
Yeah, can you please, can I ask members to ask brief and clear question and brief answer from cabinet member, that more opportunity for more people to ask the question. Councillor Biddulph, I will come back to you. Councillor Dunn, do you have any point of order?
No.
Anybody
have a point of order? No, I was going to
yes.
Add to the answer that Councillor Khan gave.
Sorry, can I hold you? Does anybody raise the point of order here?
Yes, it was Councillor Moshiso, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Moshiso.
Councillor, I cannot believe that we are listening to a cabinet member lie in front of the scrutiny panel. He has said that he met with councillors around Chiswick. I never met him. In fact, I spoke once to Hanif Khan.
So we met at Chelsea Flower Show, did we not, sir?
Councillor Khan, can you?
And did you not have Zoom meetings together, Councillor?
Chair, can you wait for?
Can I ask Councillor Moshiso to finish?
Sorry, Chair, I cannot believe we're allowing for a cabinet member to tell fiction.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That's not acceptable.
Thank you, Councillor Moshiso. Councillor Dunn, do you have to say something briefly, please?
Yes, I'll try and keep it brief, Chair. So it's about what we managed to nail down. The question was about the inadequate consultation alleged prior to the decision for the in principle decision of phase 3. So no decision to implement phase 3 schemes. That would obviously come much further down the line once they've been designed, consulted on, and incorporated into the plan that's coming back to cabinet. So the point is that the decision that was made was that in principle we are in favour of these schemes. And as a council, we are. It fits with our corporate objectives. So I would be interested to know what consultation prior to that particular decision members would have thought appropriate. We've made very clear that consultation with residents, with ward councillors, with other stakeholders will happen at the stage where we're actually looking at individual schemes and deciding whether or not to implement them. And we haven't even, we haven't come up with that consultation and engagement plan yet because we want to involve people in it. So it would be good to know again from Overview and Scrutiny Committee members what they would like to see included in the engagement plan. There's been lots of talk of the Citizen Space website, which is, it is used by many councils because of its good design, because it helps us to understand what it is that that people in the borough want. I mean, for anyone who hasn't seen it, it combines a map of a particular area so that people can really pin down.
Chair, we do not need an explanation of this.
Sorry, Councillor Biddulph.
This does not answer the question,
okay,
Chair.
Okay, hold on. Can I ask, please,
anyway.
Councillor Dunn, can you please hold on? Can I urge all members, no interruption, please, number one. Number two, can you please stick to the question, and can you please stick to the answer rather than clarification or so on, please. And that's what I would urge all members.
So,
Councillor Dunn.
If councillors are not happy with commonplace, we would be interested in hearing what they would be interested in. We know that commonplace is widely used by many local authorities and almost all government departments.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Chaudhry, please.
Do I not have a chance, Chair, to come back on those points?
You will have. You will if you need to. Yes, it's. Councillor Chaudhry, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everyone for all of your contributions so far. It's been really interesting to listen to, and I would try to keep my questions and points of clarity brief. But I just wanted to, without going on about too much, but there's been a lot of talk about and reference to a lack of consultation with stakeholders. So I just wanted some sort of assurance and clarity on how you will ensure voices are listened to going forward, and that these voices and the opinions are captured. That was the first point. Secondly, what has the feedback been from phases 1 and 2, and how has that information been used in the proposed phase 3 street space schemes? My other question is, what criteria has been used in deciding what street space measures to introduce and where? So, for example, with roadblocks and so on, how is that decided? And about advising local residents, how, like beforehand, and how it could possibly impact them. So how is that relayed? And I think my other point was, so in terms of, so just to understand the timescales involved, so in terms of the Hounslow Street Space scheme, what is the timescale between the initial the initial conception and then or identifying of the scheme and then the implementation of the trial, that the trial is implemented? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. Can I invite Councillor Khan to respond, please?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the question. I will answer some of those, and I'm sure my colleagues will be able to answer. The process in which the consultation needs to take place in an emergency environment, obviously, you know, is through the experimental traffic orders, and they needed to be implemented quite quickly. And when we were told by the government, the Department for Transport Grant Chaps, to implement them, we were told that you need to use the powers for experimental traffic orders, because there's no way that you're going to be able to do the traditional way of doing a consultation and then wait for the results and then write to residents and then implement, because that process would not have been able to happen. And if you imagine all of the schemes that we were going to implement and thought about, it was just not practical. So the government understood that, so they asked us to use those powers, and we did. And that's what we did for phase 1. And since phase 1 has been in for the last 3 to 4 months, that's when we then do the interim review. And then we then write to residents and we collect the data. And if at that point changes need to be made, we'll make those changes. Now, the next phase, for phase, the final phase, usually happens about 6 months. And then a decision is made whether these should go ahead or not go ahead. But still, it's not my decision. It still needs to be approved. And there are a number of different aspects that need to be qualified before any decision can be made. And for us to make the correct decision and the right decision, we bring in consultants to help us facilitate that. And we're using CARE. And I can leave my colleagues to explain who CARE are, but they are a well-trusted organisation to do it. So in this process of this interim review, we have received lots of information, and we have it's when we come to Chiswick, for example, one of the biggest challenges Councillor Commonwealth had is that we along the high street, there's been so many other factors that have taken place. We're still in the pandemic, which we were hoping at that time we may not have been in the pandemic by now, but we've gone back into a pandemic. So the kind of results that we're getting may not be a true reflection on what we wanted to get from the review and then the interim review. So that 6 months may go longer than 6 months. We're allowed to go up to 18 months, but obviously we don't want to, because we want to make a decision. Now, these are kind of specific schemes, but the way we needed to implement those was because the principal objective of the scheme is, one, to control the rat running that takes place and reduce the amount of traffic, so people felt safe in their neighborhoods, so the children could go out and cycle more, walk more, And then the other option there was to try and create these environments where people felt safe during the lockdown. And we're still not got all the answers. We're still preparing it. So that's the kind of process. So basically 3 to 4 months, and then 6 to 7 months, but with the potential for it to carry on. So that's the process in which we do these experimental traffic orders. But obviously we know now the further update that we've had recently from the Department for Transport Grant Shafts is to kind of look at this differently. And this is why with these interim reviews and this phase 3 and the process in which we're doing with the consultation with our ward councillors will be at the top of the list. And obviously we welcome today from the scrutiny to come up with some ideas as well for us to see how you think a better engagement would be. So that's your question on that. What was there another question?
Councillor Khan, can I Councillor Chaudhry, is it answer your question?
I think I also asked about the timescale. Did you ask about what sort of time? Oh no, I think did you ask about timescale?
It's your questions, I think, isn't it? Are you questioning Councillor Chaudhry's questions?
Councillor Bidoff, I asked Councillor Chaudhry to if she answer the question what she raised. Councillor Khan. Councillor Chaudhry, is it answer your question?
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Okay, so I was going to ask one of my colleagues if they wanted to talk about Kia, if who are our independent consultant that will be facilitating the interim reviews.
Can I ask, before we go any further, can I ask Paul Brobert if he have any comment to make, if he want to say something?
Thank you, Chair. It's simply a point of order, Councillor Bidoff. It's approaching 8 o'clock, so you would need to suspend standing orders.
I'll propose to suspend standing orders.
I'll second it, Chair. Councillor Vickham.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Thanks for your intervention. So, Councillor Lambert, please, can you briefly respond if you want to add or answer the question what Chance said? Thank you.
I don't want to add to that, but I observe that Councillor Moshiso has accused one of my colleagues of being a liar, and that Councillor Khan suggested that he had consulted Chiswick councillors. It took me about a few seconds to find an email dated 21st of May to all Chiswick councillors, which says, "Officers are currently considering options for action here. Can I ask if Chiswick councillors can let me know any thoughts on these locations to assist in the optioneering?" I'm also aware that Councillor Khan has written, that Mark Frost has written to Councillor Bidoff on numerous other occasions. So the accusation that Hanif Khan was lying is not substantiated. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Can I, Councillor Bidoff, can you hold on? We need to take further question from member, and if we need to, we can come back to it. Thank you. If you just bear with us. Councillor Chopra, please. Any question? Councillor Chopra. Councillor Chopra, are you muted, or do you have any question to ask?
Sorry, Chair. No, carry on. Not at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just step in my question, and then we'll carry forward for the rest of it. I'll appreciate the patience. My question are quite four-part in question and very short and precise. So I will expect short and precise answer if that it's okay. So my first question is,
Chair, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but Councillor Chopper, you're sharing your screen. Are you intentionally doing this? If not, please stop doing that.
Who's sorry?
It's the X button with the box, Councillor Chopper, next to the mute button. Just hit that once. There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks. Sorry, Chair. Apologies.
Thank you. So my first question is, who was responsible for the decision to proceed with phase 1, 2, and 2A? And I will, once you got answer, I will ask second, third, and fourth. Councillor Khan, please.
So, Chair, these are decisions that get done by the ward councillor, the lead member, which is me. But it happens in consultation, very much so, with the chief officer decision as well. So between the chief officer, which is a COD, and myself, the decisions are made. So that's, there you go.
So all these 1, 2, and 2A, 3 were in consultation with the officer. Is that clear?
So yes, of course. So so as you can appreciate, that as the lead member, not only is the decision made in consultation, so this is exactly what happens in this. So I'm not a technical person. My expertise is not traffic. I don't know the quite a lot of the detail that goes into planning a strategic. So it will be unfair of me to make decisions without being informed. So that's the process that will definitely happen. So in that process, if you imagine, I keep bringing us back to the moment in time when we were there, when the decisions had to be made within weeks. So for us to be able to then make that moment, then to go and consult, go and talk to ward councillors, would have delayed things. But actually, we know now today, after the interim reviews and the new instructions that have come through from the Department of Transport, this will be done in consultation and views sought from ward councillors on the scheme. So that's the key thing there.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. And that was my whole point. Brief my question and brief answer rather than detailed one. I will appreciate that if that remains the case. Councillor Khan, Councillor Dunn, let me finish the 4 points, and if you then have anything to add, I will appreciate that, sir. My second point of part of the question is, was this decision taken by Cabinet, an individual Cabinet member, several Cabinet members, or by officers acting under the guidance of one or more Cabinet members, or officers acting without guidance?
So first of all, Chair, any decision that I will make as a lead member wouldn't do it without guidance. That's, no one would ever take such an ambitious step without having input from our experts who know London Borough of Hounslow's transport network like the back of their hand. And when we're making these very important decisions that affect our residents, I would never do that sole-heartedly without any consultation. Now, now you're referring now to the following phases and before. I also sought help and advice from our other lead members on Cabinet, because it falls within their portfolio as well. Although I am the transport lead member, but if we look at our wider aspirations for the borough in terms of our environment and in terms of our climate, it makes sense to involve my 2 colleagues who are also here on the call as well. So the answer to your question is yes, yes, yes.
So my question was, Councillor Khan, who made the decision? Was the Cabinet, an individual Cabinet member, several Cabinet members, or by officer acting under the guidance of one or more Cabinet members, or officer acting without guidance? So who made the decision?
Point of order.
Okay.
Yes, Councillor Dunn.
You know who made the decision that's been called in. It was a cabinet decision. Full stop.
That's what. Thank you. That was the answer I was expecting. Thank you.
I don't quite understand why you're asking a question that you know the answer to.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dunn. My third part of the question was it a reasonable interpretation of the guidance that such measures should be introduced without consultation?
So, Chair, when you mean by without consultation, can I ask what you're referring to?
I'm referring to shall I repeat my question? What is a reasonable interpretation of the guidance, because the guidance was issued for that, and such measures should be introduced without consultation, which
yeah. So I'm just not understanding what you mean by without consultation, because an experimental traffic order is implemented so the consultation can be in a live environment. That's why I'm asking the question.
Okay. So the consultation was, it happened, the consultation, is that what you're saying?
The consultation is ongoing now as we speak.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. My fourth point was, would consultation have involved the council in taking a substantially different course?
To what?
Consultation.
Sorry, Chair, could you please ask that question again?
Would the consultation have involved the council in taking a substantially different course, which is no?
No, the process that we took is the process that the Department for Transport asked us to do. So that's the process that and we're still carrying on with that process, and the process will continue. So therefore, when we start a process, it has to complete based on the guidelines that are set out. So, yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Appreciate that you answer. Councillor Dunn, you raised your hand. Do you have anything to say, add into?
I was just wondering which of the decisions you were referring to.
Okay, the answer has been given. Thank you for that. Appreciate that, sir. Thanks. Can I invite Councillor Vikram Gerwal if they might have any question?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you to yourself, Chair. You haven't had an easy task tonight. So thank you for that. Thank you to cabinet members. Thank you to my OSC committee members and the corner members for all your participations tonight. Completely appreciate that this was thrusted upon us as a council to make these decisions, and some of the measures taken in hindsight probably could have been taken a different way, but that's completely understandable in the circumstance during the pandemic in the mix. You know, we have a fundamental commitment towards reducing traffic, reducing pollution, and consequently improving the air, and making it safer for people to walk and cycle, so forth, across the entire borough. That being said, I have a couple of questions, and Chair, I'll keep them as brief as possible and open-ended. So the first question about the initial consultation, and I am the third or fourth member, so some of my questions would have been taken by my esteemed colleagues on the OSC committee, but I'll do my best to try and not repeat too much. So number one, on the initial consultation, so looking at phase one, phase two, I appreciate you saying that it was in a lot of data has been collated in a live environment, but were any residents or businesses consulted in terms of the commonplace or hounds or have your say? Were there any other sort of forums used to decipher our plans of what should be implemented where, for example? If not, please explain why, Councillor Khan. We know that a fair proportion of our residents either have difficulties with internet connections or are elderly or are disabled, have some sort of reason to not be able to participate in an online survey or online feedback form in any way. So was that factored in to your decision-making process when you looked at commonplace or hounds that have your say? So that's my second question, or in addition to my first one. And how did you factor that into your decision? And on that point as well, were Steer or Keir used as consultants? I Keir were used and
Steer, sorry, apologises.
It's Steer? Okay, thank you, Councillor Khan, because you said Keir and I hadn't heard of them before until tonight.
My fault. I was thinking of our leader of the Labour Party. I apologise.
No, no problem. All right, well, thank you. Thank you for clearing that one up. Second question, were any schools consulted, particularly in the areas that were affected? Now, I represent Hounslow Heath ward. For example, Cromwell Road is fundamental to our ward. It's one of the busiest roads. People use it to not go down the Wenton Road South, for example, but there are two primary schools on that road. One is Orchard School, and the second is Grove Road School. Orchard School, we did get a traffic officer consult, Councillor Kiani and myself, and I gave my feedback, so thank you for that. But in terms of Grove Road Primary School, on page 33 of this report pack, Grove Road Primary School is within phase 2. We're awaiting a start date from Hounslow Highway, so I think it's safe to assume that a plan will be implemented. Councillor Kiani and I will not consult on that basis about Grove Road Primary School at all. And if not, please rectify this. I'm not sure if there's a small example from Hounslow Heath that can be used across the borough, but in my own ward, for example, we weren't consulted on that. One of the primary schools that were on your list, so please rectify that. My third question, in phase 2, and I think about what Councillor Todd said and what some of my other councillors said about emergency services not being consulted, or a resident said that to him. Can you please clarify if they were consulted? I appreciate it's in the report, but it'd be good to get that on the record. And also, were ward councillors consulted about all schemes within their area? Obviously, I've given the example of Grove Road, but more broadly. For phase 3, and this is my fourth question, for phase 3, will residents be consulted at all, and businesses?
Thank you.
Sorry, Councillor Malik, because if it's through an online forum, I think we'll go through the same difficulties again of accessibility to a large proportion of our residents. So please do give us more information on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Khan, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. So I will answer most of them at a high level because there's quite a lot of information for me to depart, and I'm quite happy for my colleagues to also jump in. So I'll take your consultation with ward councillors first, if that's okay. So and the way a lot of these schemes are kind of put together, what we think is right, not right, and how it works. It wasn't through a consultation process as per se, because these haven't actually, many of them haven't been started, implemented. They're in the feasibility study, but Commonplace was only there to inform us. Okay, so it wasn't a consultation for us to make a decision. So the ideas and the reason why some of the schemes went in earlier than others was because some other work had already taken place previously. So there were some consultations in the South Chiswick livable neighbourhood that have been going on since 2019. In terms of dates, I can get clarification. So that took place, and then there was a further consultation in May, June, July that then took place with Commonplace. So these kind of gave us an idea, and most of the responses that came through were around the Chiswick area. So and at the time, then again, I apologise for repeating myself, we needed systems that were kind of oven ready in a way, and there were some, so they're the ones that went in first. Now, in terms of the feasibilities of talking to ward councillors, 100% we will be talking to ward councillors. So, for example, I did have a conversation with my ward councillors from the Heston wards, because that's an example of one that's been implemented. But it won't happen until next year once we know where we are and what we're doing. Okay, so I did have a conversation with them and we spoke about them. And the reason why that was chosen, because there's a road in there called Burns Way, which went through a very heavy consultation process many years ago. And again, the ward councillors were really worried about, have we ignored that consultation? You haven't spoken to us, why haven't you done this? And it already appears. So these were conceptual feasibility ideas. They're not gone into any concrete. So at that process, we will definitely speak to ward councillors like we did. So to speak to those ward councillors in the Heston area, were there because of the Burns Way consultation and all of the divided opinions that took place. So we had that. So that's been done, and also Osterley and Spring Grove ward councillors who requested to speak have also had conversations with officers as well on their scheme. Now, one of the things that we have been discussing, because of the overview scrutiny and because of the some of the legal aspects, we've got to hold off on one-to-one kind of group consultation, which we will implement. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. And for your wards, we'll have a discussion. No problems with that. With officers, happy to do that, and we'll do that with all ward councillors as well. Now, in terms of the consultants, sorry, it's Steer, and I apologise for that, and also the engagement with businesses as well. I would just probably kind of answer that at a high level. So all businesses were contacted. They were all written to, because this also covers your point about the internet side of things. So they were, most residents, most businesses always get letters, and they were all hand delivered as well. And officers have provided me with some dates as well. So the Hounslow West were delivered on the 6th of May, and then when we did the initial suspension for Turnham Green Terrace, they were also hand delivered on the 6th of May as well. And then information was sent to all addresses on the 15th of June. So that will then obviously cover those not having the internet at the time, or they're away or whatever. But obviously consultation happens online as well. And where we've had schemes that have been implemented on roads with businesses which have a frontage on the roads, and where there's kind of no restrictions to loading or servicing, etc. So those kind of businesses were consulted, and they have been retained as well. So I can go into more detail with that, and one of my colleagues would want to do that. So in terms of residents, they've all been written to, and as each scheme is thought about or is about to go into its measure, all residents get written to and hand by those letters, and everyone's had them where the schemes have been going into place. You would not have received yours yet, nor would the central residents receive them because they haven't started, or we're not anywhere near that. That will happen early next year as well. I think you mentioned about your Grove Road, and I think you're referring to potentially School Street. So School Streets are a fantastic example that we as a borough are leading on. We have implemented probably the most amount of school streets across London, and people look to us to see, how we have done it. So in your initial stage, part of the street space programme, school streets come within that. And if Grove Road is one of those schools, they would have been consulted, and it would have gone through with the team. So today, I think we've might be corrected, but more than 20 school streets have already been taken in as well. So I think I've kind of covered your access, I've covered your consultation, covered the school street and commonplace and business. But actually, I'll look for my colleagues if they want to add something in case I've missed something.
Sorry, Councillor Grewal, can I just pause you in a second? Can I remind and can I encourage my OSC members to stick to the main decision under review and ask question on phase 3 and interim final review rather than broader question? Otherwise we will be going all over. So please stick to the relevant things. I will share that. Thank you. Councillor Dunn, please briefly as possible.
Right, sorry, I'm already muted. Yeah, so I'll try and be as brief as possible, and I will mostly stick to stage 3. I just wanted to say to Councillor Garrawal because he raised a particular point about the school streets. Ward councillors were consulted about school streets. So I know because I was involved in discussing that with officers at the time. So if you were missed off of that, then obviously deep apologies for that. Moving on to the phase 3, and you raised some really valid points about consultation when it comes to people who are the digitally excluded, whether that's through not being able to use the internet for whatever reasons that may be, whether it's through disability or age or poverty, that people don't necessarily have access to the internet. It's something the council is trying to address, as you know, but that obviously doesn't help with immediate consultations. So I think again, when it comes to the phase 3, we're going to be in a much better position to be able to do much broader consultations, not just relying on websites, but actually going and talking to people, reaching out specifically to specific groups and so on, because we won't be under that same pressure that we were in the first phases to introduce schemes within weeks.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn. Thanks for being brief. Appreciate that. Councillor Grewal, can I? Do you have something, or shall I go for? Let me ask the question further from all other members, and if then probably if there is anything to further.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to say, the clarity required from Councillor Khan was provided by Councillor Dunn, so no problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. Can I invite Councillor Kiani, please, to ask if he has any question?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. I just would like to echo what my colleague, Councillor Vikram Grewal, stated regarding School Street. That's which is already answered, Secondly, my point is that, the phase 1 and 2 consultation was done, but it seemed that that consultation was not gone across the councillors and the residents. So what lesson we have learned that for this phase 3 consultations are done properly, and it is all the local councillors are consulted, all the relevant parties are consulted, all the businesses are consulted. So what plan do we have on that?
Thank you, Councillor Kiani. Very valid question. Councillor Khan, please to answer.
Thank you very much for that question, Councillor Kiani. I would just take you up on one point there when you say it wasn't done properly. I think we as London Borough of Hounslow followed all the guidelines that are in statutory during this process. So I think that's a point, just point of clarification there, if you don't mind. But I obviously take on your point that as we move into phase 3 and what we will do differently, I think Councillor Dunn answered that earlier in her response, in that now that we have more time and the pressures on us as a council are not there as much, the approach will be much more engagement, and we have some suggestions that maybe, but we'll look for you to let us know what you think would be also a good way forward. It might be to engage area forums, it might be to do one-to-one as we plan to do with ward councillors. So phase 3 is really good for us because it does give us the time, the ability to look in principle, to form our strategy for the next 3 years for the LIP. So it's really important. And but yeah, so definitely there are options on the table. We're here to listen and take your kind of responses that you might want to share with us, what you think is a good way. I'm happy to do that. But I just would like to say that we didn't do it wrong. We did it in the way the guidance told us to do. And we're happy to do it differently now based on the new guidance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kiani, do you have a supply?
Yeah, I just want to say that, I didn't say that you did it wrong. I said it didn't go to the whole community. So there must be a flaw in the.
Sorry, Ms. Carney. Yeah, please let me address that as well. I apologise, I missed that point. So when you say it didn't go to the whole of the community, so obviously the consultation process is online, and actually when we put it online, it's there for everyone to use. And that's the kind of one of the ways that we do it. We go online, so it's available for everybody in the borough. Now, as you imagine that as we start rolling out the schemes, and from your ward to the wards at the east to the wards at the west, more and more questions and more engagement will happen as a piecemeal. So a lot of the engagement that's happened has happened in the Chiswick area, and so as we move now, other people will get informed. So, and then that's why probably at the moment, because your scheme in your area is still in the feasibility stage, we haven't got that far yet in our process to actually start engaging. But actually, what we have done is kind of put out our feasibility study, and some ward councillors have come back to us to ask some questions. So,
thank you, Councillor Khan. Appreciate that. Now, this is the opportunity for Councillor Ron Mashisto to ask the question. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and be brief and hopefully just ask one question for Cabinet members to answer, and then I'll ask the second, and so on. Just before I answer that question, I agree with, I think, half of what Councillor Dunn has been saying, because she seems on this occasion to be saying the right thing, but then at the same time backing it up with why she's doing the wrong thing. So I agree with the right things that she's saying, but then obviously disagree with the implementation of what she's trying to do. Let me explain why. The first one is, I've been hearing about the guidance from central government, but when I look at the council leaders blog in May of this year, on the 8th of May, or before the 8th of May, in fact the 6th of May, they declared that, in fact, I'll read it out to you, just if you allow me, Chair. They declared that this week we've had some significant announcements from the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, about walking and cycling. This is the 6th of May, to implement measures and improvement for safety of pedestrians and cyclists in our borough. He goes on to then say, what we must do is guard against everyone jumping into their cars. Now that is the 6th of May. The reason why I keep mentioning that date is because the government's guidance, or the government initiative, or the government announcement was made on the 8th of May or the 9th of May, that weekend. So they don't match up. So the street space was already in place, was already happening. It was already being implemented before the guidance came out. So I need an explanation on that, if you can be brief. Thank you.
Sure. I mean, the leader is on the call, but sorry, Chair, through you, I apologise, I just jumped in there. Sorry, Chair. I'm happy for me to answer. Thank you. So
yeah, go on.
Yeah. So like I said, the leader is on the call if you want to respond.
No, it's not the leader, it's for you, right. The cabinet member.
Let me just explain then.
Just answer the question.
Yeah, let me explain. So you know, and I know that when you are in a position and you have a responsibility, you are always briefed prior to any announcement that takes place. So we as lead members about the street space program as it comes in, and any decision like that, we're briefed. So we're sometimes privy to some information. Now the street space program, okay, was an initiative by the London Mayor Sadiq Khan prior to the kind of instructions at the pandemic that he was already implementing. Okay, so he already had that vision. We already know the vision. I can give you some statistics based on that. We know for a fact that 40% urban journeys can be done under 2 miles. So, and a lot of that can be done through potentially walking and cycling. So all these aspirations for the mayor were already in place. Okay, and he also wants to have, I think it's by 2040, wants to have 0 accidents, but there's lots of statistics. But my point I'm trying to make is that these aspirations from the London Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, already had aspirations to make our streets more safe, increase walking, increase cycling, to promote active travel. Okay, so we in London are implementing the Department for Transport's guidelines through the street space scheme. Okay, so hence why there is a potential that some of the information may have already had the aspirations to what the guidelines were there. So that's the way I can answer. We're talking about a day here, and I think well, you might need to clarify the dates. Was it a Saturday and then a Monday, or what was it?
No, it's the 6th and the 9th, 3 days.
3 days. So 3 days. So when we're looking at a wide scheme across the country to across London, so you know, I would expect maybe there might have been some lapse, but actually it is born out of the street space program that already had the aspirations of our Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. So, and if obviously it didn't meet your requirements or you were not happy with that, then you know, I'll apologise for that, for those 3 days. Sorry.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Khan. Can I intervene here? Councillor Mashish, sorry, hold on, Councillor Mashish. Councillor Mashish, was your question what I suggested earlier on, that this should be that it should be, we should be sticking to the CN under review and ask the question on phase 3 and interim and final review rather than broader question. This
yes,
was
so that question was to do with the approval of the process undertaking interim and final review. So that was to do with the fact that inadequate consultation, because the program had already started way before the government had actually announced the emergency measures. So that is to go with the call-in, the grounds that inadequate consultation with stakeholders prior to the decision, because the actual process was already started anyway. So it's not government guidance that they're following, it's Sadiq Khan's guidance that they're following.
Chair.
Okay, so Chair,
so can I go to my second point then, please?
Chair,
sorry. Hold on, just hold on. Councillor Dunn, do you have a point of order?
No, I wanted to answer Ronnie's question.
So can you just hold on? Councillor Mashisho, do you have any other question?
Yes, my second question. I've got 4 questions, but my second question. My second question is to do with what Councillor Earson raised at the outset of this call-in, and he was talking about equalities and the fact that in his neighbourhood we're getting situations of neighbour versus neighbour, and I think in Chiswick what we're getting is situations of driver versus cyclist. I am a cyclist, and in terms of equalities, I sometimes will be on my bike and sometimes will be on my car. I don't want to be in a situation where the civility of our population has been so bent backwards by these inadequate and unconsulted instruments that I could be in danger myself. So when you're looking at equalities, I'm thinking for my own safety. If I'm on a bike with car users who are angry at closures that have not been consulted, surely, I wanted to ask this to Councillor Earson, really, does he add the fact that the safety of cyclists is also in peril because of this inequalities not being answered and not being looked at? So it's for Councillor Earson first, and perhaps the cabinet members could.
Sorry, it's Councillor Earson, Chair.
Sorry.
Answering
Can you just please hold on? Councillor Mashisha, this is for question for cabinet member rather than person who is calling in.
Okay, as Councillor Dunn is a cyclist like myself, so perhaps she could come in on that one.
Thank you. Councillor Dunn, please.
Well, I'd dispute this this thing of, you know, trying to split people into cyclists and non-cyclists and drivers. I mean, as Councillor Machito rightly says, sometimes he's on a bike and sometimes he's in a car. And the majority of people who cycle do use cars, whether that's regularly or occasionally. So it's absolutely not about pitting drivers against cyclists. And I would absolutely refute that. When it comes to the safety of people cycling and walking, that's what this whole programme is about. And I absolutely take on board the need to bring people with us. I also understand that radical change doesn't come easily, and there is likely to be some disturbance and some upset and some period of time for people to get used to changes in their neighbourhood. But when it comes to measures that we've introduced, like protected cycleways, like low traffic neighbourhoods, these are absolutely to protect vulnerable road users, like cyclists and like pedestrians. So that's what the whole programme is about. It fits in with our objectives on other measures as well, environmental, but also on road safety and with the Mayor's Vision Zero programme to eliminate deaths on the road. So when it comes to cyclist safety, that's what the whole thing's about.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Dunn.
Shall I go for next because it's the opportunity for other members to ask questions?
I just got one more question. I mean, I had four, but I'll go down to just the last one then.
Okay, go quickly.
And this is to do with
Chair, I'm really sorry. I wasn't allowed to come back with my supplementary at the beginning. So please, can we move on to somebody else? I'm sorry, Ron, but I think other people got a chance to have a chance to speak.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I had four questions, but okay.
Councillor Mashisha, can you can I invite Councillor Kuldeep Thak to ask question, please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Councillor Khan. Councillor Khan, you mentioned some of the schemes were implemented as emergency measures, and the consultation is still ongoing. So, are you willing to overturn the decisions and implementations if the consultations suggest otherwise?
Sorry.
So, do you want me to answer? Yes.
What?
Sorry. Is the question for Councillor Khan?
Yeah, I've answered. Yes.
Thank you.
Can I come on the supplementary then?
Yes, sure.
If you are saying yes, is it not waste of taxpayers' money first implementing something which has not been consulted and then removing it after the consultation?
Sorry, Chair, through you.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry. Thanks for the question, and I appreciate and it's nice to meet with you as well, as you are the only elected councillor from the Tory party in the west of the borough, so it's nice to see you. When we talk about wastage, I would never ever believe that the work of the street space programme to be able to help a future generation to embrace the cleaner air policies that we're trying to educate people on, to tackle the obesity that we suffer. I mean, we know in Hounslow there's about £67 million it costs, I believe. I'm happy to clarify that, the NHS in Hounslow. So all of the work, even if we manage to, throughout the whole of the street space scheme, provide an alternative mode of transport, so people will think twice about using their cars to do a short journey and then take the opportunity to be able to walk or cycle and become more healthier. Not every scheme that we have will be perfect, and I accept that. This is why the consultation takes place. So in your answer, to be short, no, I don't believe it's a waste of money at all. And because when you talk about these schemes, as if they meet their intended goal, the amounts of money externally, in a way, that will be saved and our future generations, and the mode shift and for alternative modes of transport is really important. And obviously another point just there before my colleague comes in is that there have been people who have had their cycles in their homes for 10, 20 years. People haven't cycled now for nearly 40, 50 years. So they're quite vulnerable. They're still quite worried. Some have decided to take on cycling. Some have gone to our doctor bike service and they've got their bikes all checked out, make sure they're all kind of road safety, so they feel really comfortable about driving. We've even offered one-to-one training for our newly adopted cyclists, so they feel safe on the roads. So it's a combination of so many things that we're trying to achieve that will then allow one, safer distance, change the environment, reduce the pollution, etc., etc. So, you know, when I look at all of that, I don't feel at all the money is being wasted.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Can I ask to be briefed as possible the question, that more members have opportunity to ask the question? Councillor, if you Tuck, if you have a very brief question, please ask as brief as possible.
Thank you, Chair. I guess Councillor Khan misunderstood my question. My question wasn't about bringing the change. I'm all for the change. My question was, wouldn't it be better that we consult first and design the schemes better before implementing them, and just not go in a rush to implement anything?
Thank you, Councillor Tuck. I think Councillor Khan, can you be brief?
I'll be really brief. I'll be really
yeah.
brief. You're from the Tory party, and I accept that. Very known for the aptitude of your business, etc. acronym. But all I'll say to you is being agile, learning from how you implement something, and then you take that learning and then you bring it into something else. So if we didn't even take a single action to actually install something, where's the learning? Where's the evidence? So actually go ahead and put in another scheme somewhere else. How are we going to learn from that? So if we never take the first step, then, you know, we need to be progressive, I say. And I think if I then took your approach and I never spent any money, or I did a proper evaluation, and I never did a prototype, I just went in for it, and then how then I never then did it. You wouldn't be able to, I mean, I don't know really say the words really, but you know, you need to improve development, and you only do it through trying and learning, and that's the whole point about agile. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Be brief.
Councillor.
Well, Councillor Khan, it doesn't. You don't do experiments.
Councillor Tuck, please go through the chair, and I've allowed you 3 times the question which you asked. Please come through the chair.
I'm sorry, Chair. I thought you were indicating at me.
No, I was not. Thank you. So, Councillor Lambert, briefly, if you have anything to say, please.
I'm always brief, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Just to say to Councillor Tuck, it's perfectly clear that it was very urgent that we put these schemes in to stop a car-led recovery. That was his party, Grant Shapps, who asked us to do that. That's what we did. We consulted to the extent that we could, but not much, because we were doing it within weeks, if you remember. And we will consult better next time. But by the way, a lot of these schemes will undoubtedly stay because they're popular. and a lot of these schemes will.
Yes.
Sorry, but a lot of the schemes will stay because they're good schemes and they're popular, and we've advanced the cause of walking and cycling and reduced our dependence on the motor car.
Councillor Lambert, thank you being brief. Point of order you raised, Councillor Shisha, quickly.
Thank you, Chair. You know, they say a wise man said only fools rush in. I don't know how many fools we are dealing with, to be honest with you, but the question I have
Sorry,
is more.
Chair, can I have a point of order just there, please?
This was the point of order from Councillor Mashiso.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, with his last comment there, was he calling his government and grant chaps a bit foolish, or was he referring to us?
Can I answer that, Chair?
Yes, Councillor Mashiso.
Let me respond by saying that Councillor Lambert just said that these schemes are very popular. Rest my case.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mashiso. Can I now? We have gone through all the members. The only person who hasn't asked the question, and if this is opportunity, if they say so, is Councillor Chopra. If she wish to ask any question, if she don't, so we will move on.
Carry on, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So I have asked Councillor Bidoff to start with, because that she will have a supplementary, brief as possible, please. Please, if you have any burning question.
Thank you, Chair. I think the only person who hasn't been allowed a supplementary of their first question is me, and so
that's why I'm back to you.
Yeah. So this relates back to the beginning.
Thank you.
First of all, we're being taken for fools, and I don't like that. That's, I think, what Ron was referring to. We are being taken for fools. We are supposed to be talking about this call-in, which is phase 3. We've been given a lot of waffle about emergency, panic at the beginning. That's all irrelevant. We're supposed to be talking about phase 3. We've been told that we were consulted with. We have not been consulted. Talking about, Councillor Khan said that Chiswick councillors were consulted. I don't think he knows where he is in Chiswick, because the councillors who were consulted were not the ones for Turnham Green Ward, but perhaps he doesn't realise that there are 3 wards in Chiswick, and the questions that he's answered himself about Dan Mason Drive and whatever else are nothing to do with street space and the LTNs. And as for consultation on that, I am assured that it was pushed for by councillors. It wasn't offered by the council. It's been something that we had to force. So I have to have this. I'm sorry. Commonplace is repeatedly referred to. Steer is repeatedly referred to. These businesses do not have the right credentials to carry out any consultation that follows from phase 3. It hasn't led to phase 3. There's been no consultation on that. I'm still on the call.
Sorry, Councillor Bidoff. Can I ask you to ask question, please?
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
Yes, I will. I've got one more point to make. An email, which Councillor Lambert pointed out to councillors, does not constitute a consultation either. What I would like to know is how the Cabinet and others on their behalf are going to measure popularity of schemes. How are you going to measure it? Because at the moment you're rejecting Commonplace in some respects and not in others. You're engaging Steer, which is not a public consultation organisation, it's a transport consultancy. You've used Commonplace, which is being widely discredited. You've used Have Your Say, which again is widely discredited. Commonplace does not allow the digitally excluded to take part, and its map excludes partially sighted people. So how on earth are you going to measure popularity fairly? And
Thank
so
you, Councillor.
Ask everybody who is involved, who needs to be consulted.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Khan, do you like to answer, please?
Yeah, I would. So just to clarify, it is just the measuring of the popularity, not how we're going to measure the success of the scheme.
Correct. I'm not talking about success.
Sorry,
Councillor
Biddulph. Councillor Biddulph, please ask the chair rather than straight answer back to the cabinet member. I ask the question, you ask Councillor Hanif Khan, answer back. If you got anything further to ask, please come through the chair.
Sorry, Chair, I thought he was seeking clarity on my question, so I was responding to that. I wasn't making a new point. He was asking what I was asking.
Thank you. Do you have any question at all? Briefly, please. Just question.
Me.
Appreciate that. Yes, please.
So the other point was about the emergency services. It was a question from Councillor Gerwal about whether they were consulted. What I'd like to know is what were their answers, because we haven't seen the answers.
Okay. Councillor Biddulph, what is your question, please?
So, Chair, I've understood. I've understood the question. So, what I would request, I will, if you allow me, Chair, I will briefly answer the popularity question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then I will ask my colleagues to also add to that, and then we'll answer the second question about the engagement that we've had with our emergency services. And I think I'd like to just answer that with my colleagues as well. So in terms of the popularity, obviously when the schemes go in and people always never like change, we've had residents who have adapted or followed a route for most of their life. And when it's very hard to ask people to do something differently, and I recognize that, and it's a valid point. But when the reasons why we're doing it and the circumstances that we are facing today, not 6 months ago, but today and next year, and we're also seeing how we're going to go through Christmas, and which is there's a lot of anxiety around there. So in terms of the popularity, always when something needs to change, people will never like it. It's just normal. Some people you'll find will like it, some people you find you don't like it. And we have to find a middle ground. But this is why, in terms of measuring the popularity, I won't know now. I know I have a sense now, and I accept that. I definitely accept that. But once the scheme is in and it's been working, we've collected the data, and we've had the response back from it, then definitely we'll be able to give you a much better idea on the popularity of each scheme, and they will vary. But the only answer I can give you now is once the interim review is done, then the final reviews are done, and then we use a reputable organisation called STEER, which you have not accepted as a reputable organisation. And then once they give us the evidence and we follow a set of guidelines, then we'll know by then, really. So I think Councillor Dunn mentioned it earlier about the dividing views. So I'll end there and allow Councillor, my colleagues to answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Councillor Dunn, please briefly as possible. I'll appreciate that. Thank you.
Understood, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I mean, Hanif's covered most of it there. In terms of the review and measuring popularity and so on, I mean, the popularity is only one aspect of it. We have to look at, has it been successful, as Councillor Khan said? Does it meet our objectives? Has it, what problems has it caused? As we know that some of them are likely to have unforeseen consequences. All these things will be taken into account as part of the review. So all feedback from everyone who provides it, and the empirical data that's available, and this has been made clear in the reports. And it's not STEER that are going to make the decision. They will provide us with information that will allow a decision to be made, taking on board all these other things. In terms of the emergency services, I mean, I don't know whether to answer this because Councillor Biddulph has just said, you've given us loads of waffle about things that are not to do with phase 3. And then she's come in and asked a question that's not to do with phase 3. So the reason we've got dragged off talking about phase 3 and the review is because we've been asked questions that are not to do with phase 3 and the review. And in some cases, we've asked for clarification, and in some cases, we've gone ahead and answered them. So in terms of feedback from the emergency services, they were consulted. In general, when they reply to us, they do say that they prefer camera reinforced restricted access rather than hard closures, and we adapted some of our schemes on the basis of that advice, and also in other things like the pop-up cycle lanes on Twickenham Road, for example, near the hospital. We took on advice from the London Ambulance Service as to the spacing and position of the ones in order to ensure that there is room for cars to pull in to allow ambulances and other emergency vehicles to pass. But it is still open to them. They can still provide us with evidence, and we're still open to changing schemes based on their feedback.
Thank you, Councillor Dunn, being brief. Councillor Khan, I think it's 9 o'clock and we got to retire to consider our recommendation to put forward to the
Chair, I'll be very short.
you guys. Yeah, and I got two burning questions, very polite, very just two questions before we wrap up. So if you are as brief as possible, then please.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me just to add a tiny bit. I just wanted to give some dates as to when we actually did, and it's documented as well. So for the Met Police, we spoke to them on the 26th of August, and for the London Ambulance Service, again on the 26th of August, and then the London Fire Brigade, we did it on, spoke to them on the 9th of September as well. So I think Councillor Dunn has answered quite well. I just wanted to give you those dates. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Two polite questions from me, and that would be the wrap up. Probably I will appreciate this. And I would expect a polite answer from Councillor Khan. Thank you. So my first question would be, is there any record to show that the council gave due consideration to the responses made to the temporary traffic order? And that was my first question. And second question is there any record to show that council gave due consideration to the responses made to the experimental traffic order, please? Councillor Khan, please.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair. And I must say that you have chaired this meeting impeccable. So I'm being as polite as I can for you, Chair, but thank you. I just wanted a bit of clarification on those two lovely questions that you've asked. When you're saying was due record done on the responses to the scheme, obviously, and then you asked about the scheme as an experimental traffic order. So some schemes were done as ETOs, some were done like school streets, some pop-up cycle lanes, etc. So yes, due care was done. And just to give you an idea when it comes to the emails that we've received, we and my officers may want to also clarify on that. So over the typical period, if we were receiving emails from residents with regards to the schemes, that transport schemes that we're putting in, we would have X amount. But during this time, we've had, I would say, nearly a 70% increase on their workload due to the street space program. So they have 100% been responding, replying, and giving detailed answers wherever possible to the residents. And some answers are not always liked, but actually the answers that are given are based on the schemes that you're referring to. And so the answer to both your questions, I'll say yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Khan. I think there was one last request from Councillor Biddulph, I believe, I will consider that. And if you have any brief question, please ask so as the last question. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm not sure that we've explored the issue of the actions are proportionate to the desired outcomes. I don't know if other members of the committee feel the same about that, but I don't think we've explored that point enough. Councillor Todd raised the point, which I think fits under here, which is that health centre professionals, for example, are affected by current schemes. We know from what's going on in Chiswick due to street space that traffic has been displaced onto other roads, pollution and congestion have been displaced onto other roads. It's disproportionate elsewhere. So I don't know if other members of the committee have questions about this, but I don't feel that we're ready to retire and consider that point necessarily.
Okay, my question was, Councillor Bidoff, do you have any question?
Yes, okay. How has Councillor Khan measured the outcomes that are likely from phase 3? How has he assessed this before making this decision? And what was that assessment?
Thank you, Councillor Bidoff. Councillor Khan, please, briefly.
I'm not sure if it requires a brief answer, Chair, but I think it's I'm happy to. It's fair, and I appreciate the question from Councillor Bidoff. But as you guys will retire, I think it's only fair that you ask all the questions for you then to be able to have a proper discussion amongst yourself to come up with an idea. So I'm happy to answer that if you allow me, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you,
So
Khan.
when we look at the proportionate and the desired outcomes for what we've tried to do, definitely through the ETO process, we have mentioned already that we spoke to businesses and how we engaged with them in terms of hand delivering the letters on the 6th of May, and then to the businesses in Hounslow West, and then we wrote to every single address.
Chair, I'm sorry, that's about the past. It's not about this call-in. We need to have the question answered in relation to this call-in, which is about phase 3.
Oh, so can you tell me the grounds you're referring to then? Because yes, on your grounds, on the original, apologies if I misunderstood, this is referring to ground 3, yes?
Which has not been withdrawn.
Which is the action is not proportionate to the desired outcome.
Yes,
so that is ground 3 and I'm answering it.
No, you're not. You're answering it with information from May, which is not relevant to these proposals here in October. This paper is the one that's been called in. The decision that led to this paper has been called in.
Sure.
The grounds that I'm referring to are about these new measures that are planned across the borough.
Okay, so you're referring to phase 3.
What measurement have you made to determine whether or not the desired outcomes are proportionate?
Can I suggest that Councillor Lambert has put his hand up to answer at all if he wished to?
I think Councillor Khan should answer, Chair. It's his paper.
I tried to. Sorry,
he's answering.
Chair, you've asked me to answer, so
we can come back to Councillor Khan if we wish to. Let Councillor Lambert come up if he has to, and then if we need to, we'll go back to Councillor Khan.
The answer is actually quite simple. Phase 3 is in a very early stage. It's little more than a dream. It's
a nightmare in Chiswick.
Sorry,
Councillor Bidoff, can you please let Councillor Lambert answer, and if you have anything to please go through the chair.
It's in a very early stage. Part of the assessment of whether these things should go ahead, which I say are in a very early stage, will be whether they're proportionate. It's obvious that that's the case, and that's what we'll be doing.
Thank you, Councillor Lambert. Can I ask OSC member? And this is, I think we are approaching nearly 9:15. and we wish to retire to be able to consider our recommendation to the cabinet or to the cabinet member. Please, otherwise we will be sticking all night and we wouldn't be able to reach anywhere. So may I request, or can I ask the OSC member and retire? This is the time, and we will be come off this meeting and we will be joining our second meeting, which will be retirement for OSC to join together to be able to consider our recommendation. Thank you. Okay. Can I ask all OSC members are in the meeting, please? So if everybody is here, can I resume our OSC meeting with our OSC decisions, please? Can everybody hear me at all?
I can hear you, Chair.
I can hear you, Chair, but all I can see is a black screen, London Borough of Hounslow. We will be continuing shortly.
Okay, so
is that what I should be seeing?
Well, that's what before me, this screen, but okay. So I'm going to read our decision of OSC, what we have considered, and that's what for cabinet to consider that decision. So OSC decision. After consideration of the call-in and evidence, the Overview Scrutiny Committee has decided to refer the decision back to Cabinet for reconsideration within 5 working days. With regards to the following decision, we would recommend the Cabinet consider the following. Decision: approve the process for undertaking interim and final reviews on street space schemes. Ensure adequate and proper consultation as part of the interim and final review, including use an organization that is a member of the Market Research Society for the consultations. Ensure that digitally excluded and people with protected characteristics are enabled to participate in the consultation. Embrace the value of passing on the power and deepen the organization's approach to engagement by using different methods to engage the public.
Yeah.
Provide feedback or reports on the methods used to engage the public in these reviews. Decisions: consider and approve in principle the proposed Phase 3 street space scheme developed following further detailed analysis of the network. Ensure a comprehensive consultation on the overall policy and individual schemes by setting out the consultation approach, as well as appoint an independent organization to select the schemes, provide the evidence of the need or desire for the scheme, and listen to local voices. Ensure that ward councillors, as local community leaders and other community stakeholders, are informed and engaged in the Phase 3 development and rollout. Provide mechanisms for emergency rapid reviews of these schemes. Set out the learning, including but not limited to the unintended consequences from previous implementation and use this to inform phase 3 consultation and implementations. Conduct traffic modeling of each LTN, individuals and collectively, and publish the outcome of the modeling before a decision is made. Take into account the equalities and human rights impact through a deep consideration of the impact in each scheme. This should be actively sought, documented, and monitored. Thank you very much. And that is our decision for Cabinet to consider. And thank you. So now, if you just bear with me for a second, please. So agenda item 3, any other matter that chair consider urgent and date of the next meeting. So confirm that these are not urgent. There's no urgent matter arising. So the date of the next meeting is 2nd of December 2020 at 6 p.m. That's for remindings for OSC, which will look at second wave planning and house law recovery plan. Can I thank all members and officers, and also thank the ICT officer who were producing the meeting, and the Democratic Services officer who supported and organized it. Thank you everyone, including the public, for being present. And now with all these thanks, and can I close the meeting for today?
Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Thanks all,
Thank
everyone.
you, Chair.
Pleasure.